Hello, friends. Tattooed Biker here with you, and tonight we'll be rolling into the weekend with 3 more true stories about Bigfoot encounters. 2 are from viewers, and 1 was forwarded to me from the lovely and talented Kitty over at Pinebox Tales. I know many of you are fans of Kitty, but even if you aren't and you like this type of stuff, you should really check her out. And if you weren't aware, she's currently moving her channel, so I'll leave a link to the new one down in the pinned comments. Alright, now if you guys are ready, let's ride to Bigfoot country. Number 1. Dear Tattooed Biker, I've seen and heard Bigfoot. I'm sure there was more than one too. They were howling one night, and my grandpa was a hunter and a fishing guide at the time. I was staying with my grandma and grandpa at a logging camp where they were working in Northeast California in 1967. We all stood at the window in our cabin listening one night and trying to figure out what kind of animal was howling because Grandpa just didn't know. He was completely perplexed, and all he would say is, "It's not wolves, it's not coyotes." I've heard recordings lately on YouTube of them howling, and it's the same kind of howling. I remember how I ended up seeing one because of my granny. She'd scare the heck out of me about bears, so I would stay close and not wander into the woods myself. I was on my own while they worked, and I was always watching the woods. One day, when they had some time off, we went on a little hike through the woods together. I, of course, was watching for bears, and I saw something dark between some big trees. So I looked closer, and its head slowly turned and looked straight at me. I didn't say a thing. I was in complete disbelief. I was watching where I was walking and looked back again, but it was gone. I kept looking in that spot, but it was so sneaky. It moved fast away before I even knew it. Grandpa and Grandma never talked about such things to me, so it wasn't my imagination or put in my head. It was in the area where people claim to see them the most. Unfortunately, I can't remember exactly where, but I remember some very, very big trees. Besides an online post, this is the first time I've told my experience to anyone. I just want folks to know that they are out there. Signed, Landon. Number 2. I work for a friend of mine. He owns hundreds of acres of land and grows corn, squash, peppers, and other vegetables. And part of his land is an orchard of trees, apples, pears, and peaches mostly. I drive at night for him. I make deliveries to stores for him through the night and in the very early hours of the morning. Well, one night I had the truck loaded with squash, pumpkins, and some other stuff. I'd just left his place and was only about a 30-minute walk from the place, so I decided to hoof it back to the farm. So I got out of my truck with my flashlight because the road had 0 lights and it was total darkness out there. Just 2 minutes after I started walking, I heard a noise. It was wooded on both sides of the road, but I heard the noise over on my right. I shined the flashlight to the area that I heard the noise, but the battery was suddenly dying. It kept going on and off. I was cursing myself for not replacing the batteries. I didn't want to walk the dark road with no light at all. I was just about to go back to the truck to see if there was another flashlight when suddenly something hit me. And I mean really hit me hard. I landed between 2 trees and I felt so much pain in my arm and shoulder. I got up as quickly as I could and ran back to the truck. I jumped in with my shoulder and arm throbbing and locked the doors. Then I felt and heard something jump into the back of the truck. I tried looking in the rear view and side mirrors, but I didn't see anything. Then something hit the window. I put the headlights on, and it was just enough light to see this hairy, man-beast thing on the hood of the truck. I started to panic at the mere sight of it. I was scared to death. It disappeared from my view, then I heard it in the back again. It was grunting really loudly and throwing crates of vegetables. Then it jumped up on the roof of the truck. I kept thinking that I had to get out of there, but I didn't know how I could safely get out and get away. I felt this thing hitting and rocking the truck, and I knew I couldn't sit in my truck all night. I had to come up with a plan. I decided to just lay on the horn, hoping that someone would hear me and come and scare this thing off. Finally, I did see some headlights off in the distance. Then I felt something hit the truck twice. And then the roar of this beast, and the passenger side door was pulled clean off. Suddenly, I saw flashing lights and I heard a siren. Oh, thank God it was a police car. That's when these things ran off. That was the moment that I first realized that there were 3 of these things. It was so dark before the police car showed up that I honestly didn't know. Finally, I got out of the truck and ran over to the police car. The cop asked me what happened. I explained that my truck broke down, and shortly after that happened, my truck was attacked. I told the cop that it was 3 hairy men, at least 3 that I saw. There were vegetables all over the road and a trail of these foods going off into the woods. The crates were completely smashed, and the vegetables that were in mesh bags were mostly gone. The door of the truck was completely pulled off and laying on the ground, more than 20 feet away. I explained who I work for and how I deliver to local stores. The officer just made a comment about how he hoped that I had insurance to cover the loss of the produce and the damage. I told him that I did, and he called for a tow truck and a road cleanup. The officer then gave me a ride home. On the way there, he said to me, "I don't know if you know about the hairy men. Well, we've had some problems in the past with them. They attacked another truck last summer on the same road that your truck was on." I told him that I've lived in these parts for over 6 years and I'd never heard of them. The cop went on to say that I don't want to get in the way of these things. They'll kill you. He told me to never pull a gun out on them, no matter what kind. No guns. He said that some call them the men of the mountain and others called them Sasquatch. He told me that I have to drive roads around here at night to at least get a radio to call for help. This happened back in the mid-70s, 77, I think it was. Insurance ended up covering everything. And the man I worked for changed my hours so that it wouldn't be long before it was light out. There was no more driving at night after that. Since then, I've been listening to stories on the radio and then on the TV. Some people have been lucky. Maybe there are some that aren't quite as aggressive, but from what I know of them, they can be some real mean SOBs. I believe they were watching for me that night, sometime before they attacked. I think they knew that I'd be there at a certain time, and that they knew that I was carrying food. Number 3. Dear Biker, I was given the link to your email by a member of a Facebook group community that I belong to concerning Bigfoot sightings and the unexplained. Around 2001 or 2002, I started working for the United States Postal Service as a rural letter carrier. I had previously worked for Westinghouse at its Oceanic plant in Annapolis for 13 years before that. Northrop Grumman had purchased Westinghouse some years earlier. I was called in to sign papers concerning my security clearance at Oceanic after I told them I'd found a job at the Postal Service. So after signing the papers and listening to their debrief, I headed home. On Route 97, a woman was attempting to flag me down for help. She looked like a member of my art group, so I pulled over. It wasn't the person I thought it was, but she said that a Bigfoot had grabbed her friend and taken her into the woods. Without thinking, I ran into the woods. About the time I realized that it was an exceptionally stupid thing to do, I spotted the girl being carried. They were so far in front of me that I can't say for sure it was a Bigfoot. A few seconds later, I spotted a military helicopter in the sky and it was circling. It got lower and I saw the crewman open the door and place a weapon on a mount. I had picked up a large stick. I tested its strength on the side of a tree and needed to pick up another. After picking up the second stick, I could see the crewman point at me and whatever was carrying the girl. I became very frightened, almost to the point that I wanted to run. However, within seconds, a blonde girl, who was naked from the waist down, came running towards me. She rushed past me and just kept running. I know the copter was following, whatever had grabbed her. When I made it back to the road, Maryland state troopers had pulled over, and the blonde girl was so frightened, she ran out to her friend in the car. She was still naked from the waist down. On my way back, I spotted her clothing and picked it up. The police detained us at the location, but I listened to the girls tell their version, but later I was sent to my vehicle. 2 troopers asked me what had happened separately. Later, one of them came to my vehicle and said, "Your people want you to leave now." He made some comments suggesting that I was still in the military. I am a former Marine and I keep my hair cut very, very short. That isn't quite the end of the story. You see, I used to work out at Cho's Martial Arts, from '85 till sometime in the late '90s nonstop. I had a sparring partner there who we later learned was an FBI agent. He had told us he worked for Social Security. I had picked him up from where he said he worked on several occasions before class. After we found a weapon in his bag, he admitted he was an FBI agent and he stopped coming to class after that. Well, he showed up a few days after the Bigfoot incident and said that I had spotted a biker survivalist who was wanted by the authorities. He was indeed a huge man, over 6 feet tall and ugly as hell, but he wasn't a Bigfoot. I told him I was too far away to honestly get a good look at it. Whatever was carrying the girl had shoulders so wide that the girl's waist could easily fit between his shoulder muscles, and his neck with gaps on both sides. This implied that whoever was carrying her was around 8 feet tall. I grew up in Randallstown, and we had all heard the Sykesville monster stories. I remember hearing tree knocks almost every time I entered the woods as a youth. I didn't know about tree knocks until just a few years ago. I also delivered mail at the Woodstock PO for about 2 years. Several of the customers claimed to have seen Bigfoot. When I was delivering back then, there was a prime ape sanctuary. I know of one incident when numerous federal authorities were at the location because of a series of Bigfoot sightings. They blamed the sanctuary for allowing one of the apes to escape and not notifying the authorities. I still technically work for the Postal Service in Westminster. I am in a non-pay status, but not Bigfoot related. It's a long story. Last year, on my new route, a drunk driver went off the road and made circles in a farmer's field. A few days later, I was told some youngsters made additional circles in another farmer's field. I was told lights had been seen above fields, and this was the motivation of the kids. The police came and demanded that those farmers harvest their crops where they had the circles. The farmers were very upset with the demands of the federal government. It seems like the feds were very worried that the news media would spot the circles and make a big deal. The day that the farmers harvested their crops, a policeman from Tawnytown, who lives in Westminster, stopped on my route and had me pull in front of his garage. The farmer, who had a field behind his home, was discharging his rifle in that direction. Eventually, the local police showed up, and I was able to continue along my route. I had a parcel for his home. He claimed that Bigfoot was stealing his corn crop. I was told to leave after dropping off my parcel. Several years later, while on another route, a farmer had clearly faked crop circles one day. A few days later, another set of crop circles appeared, and I was told that they didn't look like the fake circles, and he was told to harvest his crop. While continuing on my route, 2 customers claimed to have seen a very large Bigfoot in the area. I had reported a very clear sighting of 3 Bigfoot many years ago, while lost in the Elk Ridge area. I attempted to report it to a website in Maryland that covers such things. It took about a year, but they eventually responded back and took my report. I told them that I might have had other, less clear events, and they said having a second sighting would discredit my account. So it is what it is, I guess. But I've told my stories in Facebook groups and in a couple of online forums for people who've had sightings of the things. But I just wanted my story to be told, so people know to be careful, that there are things out there. Thanks for letting me share my story here. Signed, Shane. And there it is. All I have for tonight. 3 people's true stories about their brushes with Bigfoot or Sasquatch. I'd like to give a big thanks to Shane and Landon and to Kitty from Pine Box Tales for the second story. Remember, if you haven't already subscribed to our new channel, you probably should, and I'll leave a link down in the pinned comment. So thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker, out.